Greetings, everyone. Here are the latest analyses of today's important developments. President Zelensky shocks the world by authorizing Mr. Putin to hold a military parade in Moscow. An unthinkable reality. The satellite coordinates of the Kremlin center are made public along with an arrogant warning. But behind this strange generosity is a deadly firepower trap that managed to wipe out a series of Russia's strategic targets before the ceasefire order could take effect. Have super laser weapons and AI robot armies officially taken over the battlefield? We will infiltrate the front lines to witness how artificial intelligence officially changes the game, creating a military revolution that even Russia's top experts are shocked by. The Azov forces return to Mariupol and forge a historic partnership with Japan. As Azov's shadow begins to establish deadly buffer zones right at the southern supply arteries, and technological powerhouses like Japan pour billions into the super alliance, the situation on the battlefield leaves no way back for Moscow. Here is the content and detailed analysis. The core advance to liberate Mariupol. Zelensky allowed Putin to hold a parade. Imagine if we stepped into a time machine and went back to 2018 to tell you that in 2026, a former comedian would be the one granting Vladimir Putin permission to hold a military parade in Moscow. Surely at that time you would think this was a ridiculous joke, but the twists of history are always full of ironic paradoxes. Moving into 2020, you might be angry that I didn't use that time machine to stop a crazy pandemic. By 2022, that anger would grow even stronger when I didn't prevent the outbreak of a great war. However, standing here in 2026, you will deeply understand what I mean. Today, Russia still holds its annual Victory Day military parade, but in a completely different geopolitical context, where the splendor of military equipment on Red Square seems to be just a facade for the internal fractures. From an analyst's perspective, President Zelensky's generous approval for this event to take place is a cunning tactical move. Looking at the documentary footage from the event, it's strange that the footage was still recorded in such dated quality. It's as if it exposes a harsh reality. How did we end up settling for such a temporary ceasefire agreement like this? Why does it carry so much weight, and how did Ukraine exploit the security loopholes of this very ceremony, even when the agreement was signed at the last minute? The story began about a month ago, when the Kremlin started to fear for the safety of its most important propaganda campaign of the year, the anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in the Great Patriotic War. This fear was completely justified, as Russia's air defense system had been powerless to stop Ukraine's unmanned aerial vehicles for many months. Facing this difficult situation, Russia unilaterally declared a ceasefire on May 9th. Kyiv firmly stated that no one can unilaterally declare a ceasefire whenever convenient, especially since Moscow no longer controls the pace of the war. President Zelensky then issued an ultimatum that the ceasefire could begin on May 6th, and whether Russia would enjoy a peaceful celebration on the 9th would depend entirely on whether they complied with the previous terms. However, in reality, gunfire still broke out as soon as Ukraine's version of the ceasefire began. The world held its breath, looking toward Red Square, waiting for the worst-case scenario to happen. In the midst of the deadlock, the Kremlin needed a way out, a mediator with enough credibility and influence to guarantee a fragile peace. That was when Mr. Donald Trump appeared as a broker, creating a ceasefire whose meaning changed depending on whom you asked. On his social media, Mr. Trump announced that the ceasefire would last for 3 days, covering all direct military activities. Meanwhile, Mr. Zelensky's side insisted that the order was narrowly limited to the scope of the parade. Most notably, the Ukrainian leader delivered a sarcastic psychological blow by publicly sharing the satellite coordinates of Red Square, along with the message, "This is an area where strikes are not allowed." The statement subtly warned that all targets near the restricted area are already in their sights. In the end, the parade took place without any major incidents. However, if we closely observe what is happening, we can see that Ukraine has no illusions that Russia will maintain long-term peace after the short-term benefit of this ceremony. While he made great efforts to paint his role as a peacemaker in a positive light, in reality, Ukraine gained a much more tangible and humanitarian benefit. That was the exchange of 1,000 prisoners of war. Real people with families waiting anxiously are the tragic yet bright spot amid all the cold calculations. This agreement's importance is strengthened by the United States' coordinating role. Washington can put pressure on Kiev through intelligence and equipment support packages. However, the recent conflict in Iran has significantly changed the value of these resources. The White House has publicly warned about delaying weapons supplies to Europe in order to prioritize replenishing its own stockpiles. In addition, the fact that Russian intelligence has to shift its focus to the Iranian front has also somewhat reduced the direct pressure on Ukraine. For Ukraine, safeguarding critical supply lines and long-term support matters more than a symbolic victory from breaking the ceasefire. On the other hand, Russia's commitment this time is clearly pragmatic. If Moscow breaks it, Ukraine will have no reason to hold back for the sake of that square's safety. Although this may be a faintly optimistic signal for a solution to end the war, it is still too early to confirm anything. The strangest thing is, while the whole world is watching every development, in the United States, news about the ceasefire didn't even appear in the mainstream evening news. Could it be that such a shocking event is being overshadowed by larger geopolitical dynamics on other fronts? The indifference of Western media toward this ceasefire is a clear sign of the fatigue that is overshadowing diplomatic efforts in this prolonged conflict. However, from the perspective of a geopolitical observer, the key point to recognize is that all real losses had already been determined before the agreement was signed. Because the peace agreement was only reached at the last minute, the Kremlin was forced into a passive position, having to plan the parade while maintaining a high state of combat readiness without any prior guarantees. As a result, there was a strange ceremony where security concerns completely overshadowed the usual military splendor, and the price paid for that temporary peace was the exposure of strategic weaknesses. From a propaganda perspective, this could be considered the most lackluster military parade in modern Russian history. The ground military equipment units were unusually absent from the square, partly because of the fear of being attacked from the air, but mostly due to the severe shortage of reserve equipment after the tremendous losses on the battlefield. Instead of showcasing real military might, Moscow had to resort to using documentary footage of units fighting on the front lines to fill the gap on the big screen. Even the legendary T-34 tank, which is an immortal symbol of Victory Day, did not appear in this year's military parade. This absence may be a calculated move to avoid highlighting the shortage of modern tanks, which have already been depleted too much in previous offensive campaigns. Mr. Putin's speech also lacked the strong rhetoric and call for total mobilization, as observers had predicted. He still mentioned that Russian soldiers are facing an invading force equipped and supported by the entire NATO bloc. But this statement became quite contradictory when the Prime Minister of Slovakia, a NATO member country, was sitting right on the honorary platform. Claims that the heroes were advancing were also called into question by field monitoring data. In fact, the situation on the battlefield is at a stalemate, and Ukraine has even been regaining control in some key areas over the past few months. The international guest list also highlights the bleak state of Moscow's diplomatic standing. At that time, it was not a counterweight to the West, just a gathering of guests with little international influence. From a military standpoint, the cost of a peaceful ceremony in the capital is enormous. To protect Red Square, Russia was forced to withdraw air defense systems from neighboring regions to Moscow several days in advance. The Ukrainian side did not miss this golden opportunity to launch a large-scale hunting season. On May 7th and 8th, Kyiv launched the second-largest drone attack since the beginning of the war. Almost every important target in the western half of Russia was attacked, from strategic oil refineries in Yaroslavl, flight control centers and research facilities in Rostov, to targets in Perm and the building of the Russian Federal Security Service in Chechnya. In particular, the drone squadron's codenamed Flamingo launched a direct attack on the navigation equipment manufacturing plant in the Chuvish Republic, delivering a heavy blow to the enemy's military technology supply chain. Although the intensity of the attacks may decrease in the coming days as Russian air defense systems return to strategic positions, this trend has left a long-term problem for the Kremlin. If they cannot reverse the situation and better protect their infrastructure, the air war will continue to severely erode the Russian economy through strikes on energy and logistics. Looking at the big picture, this is truly one of the strangest ceasefires in the history of modern warfare. With assurances from the US, the minimum terms were enforced for the ceremony to take place, But in reality, Ukraine had already gained all the strategic advantages and inflicted heavy losses on the opponent even before the ceasefire officially took effect. The Crimean Peninsula is shaking violently under calculated tactical strikes. No longer just empty threats, the warriors of Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Ghost Special Forces unit carried out a lightning raid on the enemy's key assets. A military aircraft along with a series of landing ships and supply vessels have been wiped off the Kremlin's asset list. In a daring raid on this area, unmanned systems completely disabled the assault landing ships. A support ship, along with a warehouse system storing equipment, and especially the B-12 Cheka anti-submarine seaplane. Clearly, the Ukrainian military is carrying out a strategy that doesn't give the enemy a single moment of rest in the territories under their control. The lands that once seemed inviolable are now closer than ever to liberation, as the flame of hope begins to spread toward Mariupol with growing force. The steel fist of the Ukrainian armed forces is breaking through defensive lines, while new top-tier weapons are throwing the military leadership in Moscow into a state of panic. A revolution in military technology is unfolding before our eyes, completely transforming the face of modern warfare. In particular, the legendary Azov forces are returning to Mariupol with powerful long-range reconnaissance and strike systems. Pilots from the 1st Corps of the Azov National Guard are now patrolling routes as deep as 160 kilometers behind the front lines. In their sights are not only Mariupol, but also Russia's strategic military targets. Every reinforcement convoy, every ammunition transport on the highways, the lifelines connecting Mariupol and Zaporizhia, now faces the risk of turning into terrifying fire traps. Images of Urenbach transport vehicles burning fiercely hundreds of kilometers from the front lines are the clearest evidence that Ukraine has established full control over key transportation arteries in the south. A deadly nighttime kill zone for Russian logistics is taking shape, signaling a dramatic and tragic shift in the situation. Not only on the ground, but the skies over Ukraine are also witnessing the rise of a new deadly beast. A technological breakthrough has occurred as the PZ-LM-28 transport aircraft, originally intended for civilian use, has been ingeniously modified to become a hunter of suicide drones. Under its wings is the P-1 Sun or Sting interceptor launch system, turning these otherwise slow propeller planes into a nightmare for Russian UAV operators. On the fuselage, more than 200 kill marks are proof of its incredible destructive effectiveness, with a cost of only about $500 per launch. Ukraine is creating a brutal economic dilemma for its adversary by taking down expensive assets with a highly cost-effective solution. The Chekercom TC-300 electro-optical targeting system from Australia, installed under the nose of the aircraft, allows the gunner to detect and destroy targets with absolute accuracy, taking the concept of drone hunters to a whole new futuristic level. The technological race goes even further with the appearance of the laser system developed by Cineprotec engineers. This is a mobile combat complex on the battlefield, specially designed to sweep all types of drones out of the sky. With the ability to handle reconnaissance UAVs at a distance of 1,500 meters and FPV drones within nearly 1 kilometer, the system is proving its superior power right in the final testing phase. The future of this system will allow it to destroy targets at distances of up to 5 kilometers, creating a solid shield of protection for frontline units. Unlike the bulky Soviet-era equipment that was mainly for show, the system is the embodiment of modern warfare by integrating artificial intelligence to automatically lock onto and track targets without requiring extensive human intervention. When the artificial brain officially joins the battle, Russian drones will soon realize that they have no escape from laser beams converging with millimeter precision, capable of burning through their shells or disabling their entire electronic systems right in the air. In that fierce context, the presence of ground robot systems is becoming the silent heroes of the Marines. These machines handle the most dangerous jobs, from evacuating wounded soldiers under fire to supplying ammunition and giving direct fire support. They are not just tools of war, but living shields that protect the lives of soldiers on the battlefield. Mariupol is no longer just a name from a painful past, but is gradually becoming a symbol of return and the revival of a resilient nation. On the blazing battlefield, what we once thought only existed in movies or science fiction has now become the harsh reality we breathe. Under the intense surveillance of Russia's drone network, Every step a soldier takes or every turn of a wheel on the battlefield can instantly become a target for a lethal strike. In that tense atmosphere, the Marine forces of the 34th Brigade are changing the game by deploying GZC ground robot systems, most notably the logistics beast called Termit. This is a survival solution for frontline units when traditional vehicles can't get through the hail of bullets and mud. With a payload of up to 250 kilograms, Termit's track system allows it to cross the harshest terrains, from swamps and clay to roads torn up by artillery, places where wheeled vehicles are completely powerless. Its adaptability is a testament to sharp military thinking. When necessary, its side panels can be expanded to transport the wounded and carry out evacuations right under the enemy's eyes. The most amazing thing is that this entire process can be controlled from anywhere in the world, with just a laptop and an internet connection. Soldiers like Ken or Okota from that region, even though they've never touched robotic technology in their daily lives, are now operating these devices as if they were playing a video game. But this is a game where the price is the lives of their comrades and the fate of the nation. However, this technological war is not a bed of roses. Each mission is a tense battle of wits, where the operating crews must meticulously analyze every meter of the road to avoid the dense network of mines. There are times when these iron saviors themselves get stuck, forcing the soldiers to risk their lives by entering dangerous areas to rescue them under the constant surveillance of enemy drones. Sacrifice and luck always go hand in hand, but the Ukrainians do not stop. They are upgrading the Termit into real fighting machines by installing machine guns, turning them into extremely effective close-range fire support weapons. With strategic vision, by 2026, Kiev plans to deploy 25,000 ground robots to the battlefield. Focusing on autonomous capabilities in long-range operation creates an army of tireless steel warriors. On the global geopolitical chessboard, Ukraine is emerging as a center of defense innovation, attracting special attention from major powers, especially Japan. Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha and Ambassador Yuri Lutvinov skillfully incorporated the message of the domino effect. If Ukraine falls, security from Europe to the Indo-Pacific will collapse. That's right. The cooperation between Japan's Teja Drone Corporation and Ukraine's amazing drones is a testament to the perfect combination of Tokyo's sophisticated electronic components and Kiev's invaluable combat experience. This is a symbiotic relationship where the latest technologies are tested in the harshest conditions, facing an army once considered the second strongest in the world. It's not just Japan. President Volodymyr Zelensky is rapidly establishing a drone alliance with European partners. From joint statements with Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr to strategic agreements with German Prime Minister Friedrich Merz, Ukraine is transforming from an aid recipient into a partner in high-tech weapons production. These agreements cover everything from air defense systems, long-range weapons and artillery shells to electronic warfare solutions and intelligence data sharing. Countries such as the Netherlands, Italy, Turkey, Greece, and even Saudi Arabia are being drawn into the orbit of this new cooperation model. Ukraine is not only defending its own skies, it is exporting a new doctrine of warfare. An era where artificial intelligence and human courage are intertwined is one that is reshaping the world order. So, in your opinion, what does it mean when Ukraine publicly reveals the coordinates of Red Square and allows the parade to go ahead?